Hello everyone, welcome to Chapter 11, Lesson 3, Part 2. Today we're going to be learning about outliers. So what an outlier is, it's a data value set that is either much greater or much less than other values in the data set. If data value is more than 1.5 times the value of the interquartile range beyond the quartiles, it is an outlier. And we will explain what that means. So if we look at example 2, it says the ages of candidates in the election of 23, 48, 49, 55, 57, 63, and 72. Name any outliers in the data. So good news for us is already in least to greatest. So we have the ages of 23, 48, 49, 55, 57, 63, and 72. Now, what an outlier is, so we all see the ages. So some of the ages may be out of the ordinary. So if you look at all the ages, 48 through 57, all those ages are kind of in the same range. I see, just from guessing, 23 is a little out of place because it's so much younger than the rest. Just based off the assumption that 23 is so much younger, I'm going to assume that's the outlier. Maybe 72, just by looking at the ages. But first we have to find the interquartile range. And how we do that is first we have to find Q3 and Q1. So our median is the one in the middle, so that's 55. Now if I look at my first half, Q1, 48 is my Q1, and in my second half, the one in the middle is 63. So my Q3 is 63. Now to find IQR, I do Q3 minus Q1. And if you need a reminder, just look at the previous video about how to find quartiles. So Q3, so we have 63 minus 48. And that should equal 15. So my IQR equals 15. Now we're going to use the IQR to help us find the outliers. So remember the 1.5 times the value of the interquartile range. So I take my IQR and I'm going to multiply it by 1.5. So 15 times 1.5 is going to equal 22.5. So here's my next step. I take 22.5 and I subtract it from my Q1 and I add it to my Q3. So I have Q1 minus 22.5 and Q3 plus 22.5. So Q1 is 48 minus 22.5. And I'm going to use my calculator. 48 minus 22.5 is 25.5. So that equals 25.5. So any numbers below 25.5 is an outlier. Now for Q3 is 63 plus 22.5. And that's going to equal 85.5. So any number higher than 85.5 is an outlier. So if I look at my list of numbers below 25.5 as 23, if I have any numbers above 85.5, which is none, so my outlier is 23. That is the only outlier. So I'm actually going to do B with you guys. So, and I'm also going to write it step by step. So step one is least to greatest. Step 2, find IQR. Step 3, you're going to multiply IQR times 1.5. And that's going to equal, we'll call it, we'll call it, I want to call it X, but we'll call it, how about, we're going to call it 0, because it's, or O, capital O, because it's going to help us find our outlier. So step 4 is we're going to do Q1 minus my number that's going to find my outlier. No, this is too confusing. It looks too much like 0. We're just going to call it X. And then, so we do Q1 minus X, and then Q3 plus X. So these are our steps. And then step 5, anything less than is an outlier. So anything less than is an outlier, anything greater than is an outlier. So if we look, these are the steps. So it's 5 steps to find the outlier. That was a little bit more, but we simplified it. Least to greatest, this is already in least to greatest. So we have 88, 251, 257, 354, and 1,000. I'm going to make these semicolons because 1,121. That I'm not going to put a comma, that way it's a little bit easier to read. So my median is here. That's my number in the middle. So my Q1 is going to be the number in between 88 and 251. And my Q3 is going to be in between 354 and 1,021. So we're going to have to do some calculations. The number that is in the middle of 88 and 251, and then divide that by 2, is 169.5. So my Q1 equals, was it 169? Yeah, 169.5. My Q3 equals, so the number in between 354 and 1,121, divide that by 2, 737.5. By the way, if you just kind of look at it, it's obvious, it's very obvious that 1,121 is going to be an outlier because that number is too far away from the other numbers. 88 might be, we'll see. So let's find the IQR. So we have 737.5. You have 169.5. We're going to subtract it because this is Q3 minus Q1 equals IQR. So it's 0, 2, 17. There's going to be 8. It's going to be 6 and 5. So 568 is our IQR. So now we're on step 3, multiply IQR by 1.5. So 568 times 1.5. 568 times 1.5 equals 852. So 568 times 1.5 equals 862. So now I do step 4. Q1 is 169.5 minus 862. Obviously, can't do that. We don't have any negative numbers. Next, we have Q3, which is 737.5 plus 862. So 599. Oh, would you look at that? So we don't have any negative numbers. So that this is going to equal a negative number. So that's why I didn't do it. Now the 1,599, do we have any numbers larger than that? We do not. So I was under the impression that 1,121 would be an outlier, but I was incorrect. So there's no numbers less than Q1 minus X, and there's no numbers greater than Q3 plus X. So our outliers is going to be none. So if we look at example 3, it looks like they did a lot of the work for us. We have the IQR of room A and room B. It says, reading off the bottom, both classrooms have a range of 35 points, but room B has an IQR of 21 points, and room's A IQR is 20 points. There were slight differences in the medians as well as the first and third quartiles. So we have to compare and contrast their measures of variation. So when we're comparing and contrasting, I already went over the answer. So the ranges were the same at 35. So that's how we're comparing example 3. Both have 35. The median, now we're comparing the median. Oh, sorry. Looks like they jumped to the IQR. So you look at the IQR. One of them has 21 and the other was 20. So we just have to explain what the differences are. And then there are slight differences in the medians as well as the first and third quartiles. So they found the range, median, quartile 3, quartile 1, and IQR, and they just explained that one of them was slightly different, but they were almost the same. So go ahead and try C. So we're going to compare the measures of variation. So what that means is we have to find all of these, and then we're going to compare them. So find the range, median, Q3, Q1, and IQR for part C. So after finding the measures of variation, I look at Antelope. Antelope has higher measures of variation for all numbers. So I found the range, median, Q1, Q3, and IQR. So I'm just explaining Antelope has a higher measures of variation. And that is the end of the notes. Just the main thing, make sure we know the steps and how to find outlier. And that's these steps here. And thank you for watching.